where you are, because it would be good to have any questions before we wrap this session up. If there's anything people would like to ask John about.
Yes. I'd just like to ask John, you finished on that, this urgent to kick out this government, but replace it with what?
Okay, I think it's a critically important question, because at the moment the only option is the Ed Miliband Labour Party. Because under our current current electoral system, that's the only prospect of finding some alternative to replace the Tories. And the way that the Labour has shaped up so far in opposition has not been inspiring. There's too many issues in which they've sat on the fence. I give the example of on pensions, where the government is forcing through the change from RPI to CPI. The Labour front bench abstained. A number of us forced the vote against that. And too often in the last period, there's been a trepidation by the Miliband leadership in terms of taking a direct oppositional position to this government. My view at the moment is that don't expect the campaign to bring this government down to be led in Parliament, and don't expect it to be led by the Labour leadership. I think what we've got to do is recognise, in rebuilding Labour and trade union movement as a social movement, and linking up with all those other social movements that are developing at the moment in opposition to this government, we've got to build up such a climate of resistance and climate of opinion that no government can get elected again or be in power again unless they do actually take the lead from the movement itself. Now, that might sound a bit naive, but actually if you look at history, that's exactly what's happened in the past. The politicians, to be elected, have been forced to reflect the views and wishes of the people and those periods of struggle. And I think that's the period that we're now going into. And it's interesting. This is, Tony Benn tells people time and time again, the general community at the moment are miles to the left of the political class, whether they're Labour or Tory or whatever, miles to the left of them. And if you look at the campaigns that are going on right the way across the country, most of which are not reported, whether they be individual environmental campaigns, whether they be campaigns about benefits or whatever. Again, they're miles to the left and also much more creative than anything that's happening within the political elite. Because otherwise, and I think that's the way we break it down. I'll just give one other example. One of the elements I missed out of the welfare state analysis is the issue around benefits. One of the things that came out of the 30s and into the Attlee government and the welfare state was that we would construct a welfare state where no one would ever again live in absolute poverty. So we introduced a system of benefits whereby if you had a disability, you got disability benefits. If you're out of work, you had unemployment benefits, etc. And although they were kept people out of absolute poverty, there was always issues around relative poverty, of course. That's all going now. We've now got people whose benefits, as you know, we've exposed it through PCS, where in job centres people are given targets to knock people off benefits for the most spurious reasons. We've got people now living not just 3 months at a time, but 3, 6, 9 and 12 months with no benefits whatsoever. We've got people with disabilities who've lost their disability living allowance on the most spurious grounds. Do you know, in Parliament we even raised the question, do people have to be retested who are both deaf and blind? And they said yes. I said, well, I don't believe in lures. People do not get cured. Even they now are being forced to the Hoover testing. In my area now, we're now introducing a system of food parcels for people who have lost benefit. And I received so many people in my search as a result of that. What's happened as a result of that, which is brilliant really, we've now got social movements and campaigns establishing all over the country, attacking people with disabilities, mobilising to attack those reforms. In Atos, the private company that are doing the medical assessments, who gained their profits as a result of the benefits that they save, so that conflict of interest is there. Atos, all their offices in Scotland a month ago were occupied by people with disabilities. Closed down every office, mobilising on a way, I think, more effectively done than ever before. The women's movement is moving again. Barrack, the people of black and ethnic minorities, mobilising again. So I think what I'm trying to say is we create a climate of resistance, a climate of political opinion, that no matter who's in government, they know that if they don't follow the wishes of the people, they will be brought down in exactly the same way. And that has to be driven into every political party, and that includes the Labour Party itself.
John, I know that you've done more than most to try and get the anti-trade union laws repealed, and thank you for all your efforts on that, but unfortunately we still have very draconian anti-trade union laws, and you know from Unite in your own constituency that it's been forced time and time again to try and ballot for industrial action and try and get a clear mandate for doing something, that how difficult this is. And we all know that RMT have also faced similar difficulties whenever they try and take industrial action, and these are some of the most militant groups of workers wanting to take action in defence of themselves. I welcomed what you were saying about needing to be robust about the laws, because I think that this is one of the areas and where we are getting tensions between different sorts of strategies, and to be honest, some of the people in the Labour Party who say that we must be squeakily clean within the law and we can't be robust around it. When we're facing laws like this, when many Labour councillors are going to be faced with situations where they have to decide whether they implement draconian cuts. Here in Plymouth, we're facing 25% cuts over 3 years, £30 million off in local government, with enormous impacts for the workforce, but also impacts for the public sector across the city. Do you generally think that we need to have that dialogue with those of our perhaps more scrupulous colleagues who are, and comrades in the Labour movement who are saying, oh, we must do this constitutionally, because by the time we get to the next general election, if we don't demonstrate through mass action and put the pressure on in the streets, the welfare state will be gone, the public sector and the notions of public sector service will be gone, a lot will be privatised, and essentially we'll have rich people meeting once or twice a year, having a nice dinner and deciding how to award contracts for delivering minimal public services.
I'm in some difficulty here because I'm getting worse. I sit in Parliament opposite a group of multi-millionaires who are cutting these services with alacrity. And my problem is, I'm beginning to feel physical towards them. You know, these people need a good slapping. My Bernard Macaliski moment is coming to me. I've already been thrown out for grabbing the mace once. And the reason I get angry about, and I joke about it, but the reason I get angry about it, if you sat in I do 2 surgeries a week. If you sat in those, you would weep. You would weep. The problems people are bringing in. This is no exaggeration. I suddenly think about I have a caseworker, a couple of caseworkers work with me, which is marvellous. And we've talked before about whether we get counselling of some sort. You're sitting there and people are coming with their families, you have the kids there and all the rest of it, desperate for a roof over their heads, living in appalling accommodation with Rachmanite buy-to-let landlords. And I can do nothing about it whatsoever. And I have people, as I said, are suspended on benefit. I had a widow in last week who nursed her husband for 5 years, had to give up her work and all the rest of it. Now is expected automatically to get a job. I think she failed to fill in one form correctly, and was one of those people who've been suspended for 3 months and has her electric cut off. It's that sort of stuff is going on in 2011. We are the 5th richest country in the world, and as a result of the maldistribution of wealth, people are now going into, I think, absolute poverty again. So I get very angry about this, and the law becomes almost immaterial to me now, almost immaterial. But in terms of trade union action at the moment, RMT had some people know, I was putting a bill through Parliament called the Trade Union Freedom Bill, which was supported by every trade union in the TUC, but not supported by the last government. Unfortunately, it was talked out by Labour ministers, and all it did was take us back to pre-Thatcherite days. It didn't even bring us up to the level of European trade union rights. In fact, it was so moderate, this bill, I was embarrassed to be associated with it. But it was just trying to get to an even sea with the rest of Europe, that's all. But one step towards that. It didn't even take us back to Taft Vale of 1906. But that was talked out. I then produced a bill to try at least iron out these difficulties about trade union ballots. So mention has been referenced to in my constituency. I've got the Heathrow in my constituency, so the cabin crew dispute. Every time they ballot, the employer takes them to court to find some minor detail that will overturn the ballot. So 15 people not balloted properly, even though the majority was 8,000. It wouldn't affect the majority, whatever. They still lose in court, they have to reballot. I tried to put a bill through then. It got talked out with the Tories, and I couldn't get enough Labour MPs to attend to get it through, unfortunately. But what's interesting, last month RMT won in the courts. They won in the courts a significant victory around the issue about these technical details. And both RMT and ASDEF now, in a joint case, have overturned a lot of what my bill was trying to rectify, thank goodness. I think the Tories may come back with an amendment now to some legislation that they'll want to put through. But if they see industrial action taken on any scale, don't underestimate their ability to bring in part of what the old government used to call the Civil Contingencies Act, which would outlaw strike activity in certain sectors overnight, and they're capable of doing that. At the moment, within the Tory party, the debate that's happening is you've got a large number of new right-wingers saying we've got to introduce this legislation now in advance of industrial action. You've got others saying you have to wait until the general public are provoked by, the rail system not working or something like that. And there's others saying, and I think they're most probably right, if you introduce something like that, you almost certainly are going to get a general strike on your hands. So that demonstrates actually the climate itself is quite combustible, and there's a lot of combustible material out there. And it's difficult to predict which way it will go, but I think the reactionaries within the Tory party, no matter what the Lib Dem coalition partners say, the reactionaries will want to bring forward more anti-trade union legislation. Finally, just on this point as well, in terms of cuts overall, my view at every level is what we should be doing is a simple message of no cuts. Now, I know how difficult that is in local government. I was deputy leader of the GLC when we went through the rate capping campaign, and me and Livingston split because I refused to make cuts and all the rest at that point in time. So I know how difficult it is. In those days you could be surcharged, lose your home and everything. These days surcharge doesn't exist. It's simply the officers basically take control, the chief exec takes control. So I know how difficult it is for Labour councillors and others to take a no-cuts position. But my view at the moment, in this climate of resistance, I think everyone should be saying no cuts. I genuinely now think that's the case. I don't say that as a bravado measure or anything like that, because I know how difficult it is. And I think what we've got to do is at every level keep in dialogue with people, where we're saying to them, we don't think these cuts are happening, you should be campaigning against those cuts, and if you're in any way in a position where you can seek to prevent them, you should use that role to seek to prevent them in that way. Finally, on this issue about aspects of Labour MPs, let me just say this as well. I'm trying to be in a situation where I'm extremely friendly with everyone. I don't take any personal issue against people, apart from a few Tories. On my own side, what I'm trying to do is say to them, look, on a number of issues, you can come so far, and that's brilliant, but you need to go a step further. And I'm not denouncing or anything like that, but what I am saying is that if you don't stand with us now, if you don't stand in this campaign now, so Miliband's speaking at March 26th with a breakthrough, but actually I put down a motion in Parliament so that all Labour MPs should be marching with us, not just speaking. And I'm saying if you don't stand with us now, when it comes to the next election, people are going to be saying, where were you when we needed you? Where were you in that occupation? Where were you in that demonstration? Where were you when we needed you voting against these things in Parliament? And in that way, I'm trying to edge them along into some form of political understanding about the longer-term prospects for the Labour Party going into government and being sustained in government, rather than just opportunistically expecting to go back into government because we're just not the Tories. We've got to be something better than that.
John, I'm in great difficulty because the timetable is getting completely mashed here, and we won't have enough time to show the second film. There's one more question out there, and then we've got, and that's really, then we can move to 008 and really get down to business, yeah? Yeah, quick.
Yeah, it's just a quick question. Halfway through your talk, I think you mentioned witchcraft.
God, did I? Did I? Witchcraft?
I was just wondering, do you think witchcraft might help to bring down...
That's a great one. I think, did I say witch hunt or witchcraft? If I did, what do you mean, getting wax molds of camera and sticking things? Look, I'm up to anything at the moment.
Okay, John, a round of applause, please.